I've been messing with Half-Life 2 custom mapping for a few days. Well, maybe more like a week or so. I've been messing with the source engine for, you know, 22 years, since 2004, right when Half-Life 2 came out. And I still have Game Informer magazines or like PC Gamer or whatever from back before it released. Um, and that was one of the things I was hyped for was the source SDK mod tools, because my interest, I've always been an artist, but my interest started with like the Tony Hawk Pro Skater, skate park editor. Uh, and then when I first got a PC, the HPA 305W I had when I was 12 in 2003, it could play some games. One of them it could play, it was a slideshow, literally, but one of them was Half-Life, but one of them that I used was Delta Force Black Hawk Down. It's sort of like the Arma games. It has a mission editor, not exactly a level editor, but you could place different stuff in the level and put these sort of general objectives. And I read that 12-year-old me read the documentation and was doing my own levels for that. And following Half-Life 2 before its release, that was one of the big things I was hyped for, was the Source SDK. I had never done any level editing with Half-Life, even though I did technically own the games. I don't know how you would have acquired Worldcraft at that point, if it came with the game or this or that, or either way, I just didn't know enough at that moment to do stuff to that level. But I still have magazines from back then, like 2003, showing images from within Hammer Editor. And when I finally got the game, that was one of the first things I was fucking with. And I've been using various versions of the Source engine for over 2 decades, really just to create stuff. Not exactly as portfolio pieces necessarily, although they can function as that. But I mostly do it just because I enjoy the process of mapping and just creating stuff. It's just another art form, in my opinion. I've always been, inclinated for stuff like that. And I go through periods with it nowadays. I might go months or even a year or something like that without really messing with it. Mostly just because modern versions of Source, Steam is just a disaster. A lot of that started in 2013 with the Steam Pipe update. So I was watching some Half-Life 2 related videos because of this, and one of them was talking about different, pre-release stuff, leak stuff, beta stuff, whatever you want to call it, and how, old versions of like missing information and different mods like that just don't work. But I see the date on it, it's like, oh, well, the last release was 2011. Well, 2013, as I had mentioned before, broke most of the mods for Half-Life 2. Half-Life 2, like, source modding kind of never recovered after that. Most of the stuff worth a fuck was made before Steam Pipe, but um, a lot of the level design shit is broken. Even now, you have to do more than necessary to get it set up. But one of the problems is that, for an example, I preferred using the CSGO branch, but they turned it to CS2, and even though I have the legacy option for CSGO, well, it won't let me use it because it expects me to install a 50 gigabyte update for CS2 that I'm not even using. And I actually, at this point, can't even get the mod tools to launch. And it's just stupid because, like, I paid for CSGO. And it's like I would have to pirate a game I technically paid for to be able to use the tools like I want. But through the years, the different versions of Source games I bought was specifically to get access to the editors and new features they would have. Like, one of the things I run into a lot, I was doing a couple years ago a Left 4 Dead map, and I ran into an overlay limit because I use a ton of overlays. I'll layer them and different stuff. I'm very elaborate with my level design, And I tried to switch to CSGO's branch because I knew it had a higher overlay limit. Well, it just wasn't fucking working. And different custom compilers, they just weren't working either. And that kind of pissed me off. But yeah, I'll do some pretty elaborate level design, and it's just to look nice. My strengths have always been, I'm very meticulous with texture selection and alignment, and also lighting. I used to get a ton of compliments on my lighting from other mappers that I talked to personally back in the day. And I also relied a lot on overlays. There are certain overlays that you can use basically to create a sort of like ambient occlusion effect, and it can add a lot of depth to a map that otherwise, would look kind of flat. And I mean, I'm so good at the stuff that I can make just a fucking hallway look beautiful. Um, but due to the difficulties of working with the tools at all nowadays, I don't do it so much as I used to. Mostly because at this point, I'm basically relegated to Half-Life 2's versions. Half-Life 2, Episode 1, Episode 2. Also, I think Half-Life Source works. But most of what I would do is I would import all of the assets from all the different games, the textures and models to like a particular version, in my case, CSGO's version. And I would even bring in textures from other games, right? Like, for example, right now in Half-Life 2's version, I have Kingpin Life of Crime textures imported. On the Counter-Strike Source version of Hammer, I have um, Max Payne 2's imported, but they're not set up to work together, so I would have to redo it to make those work with Half-Life 2, which is another annoyance. But yeah, I would get as many assets in one place as possible. And, like at a point, I would pick whatever best version of Source I had. So at a point, that was Portals, then Portal 2's, and then I had Left 4 Dead 1, and then Left 4 Dead 2, and then CSGO. That's the most recent version I would have now, but I can't really actually use it right now. One of the things I liked about that was having access to the dynamic, sun shadows, right? The orthographic shadow projection from the sun. Just dynamic shadows. Like when Source Engine came out, I was one of the first to realize you could use that one. There's some entity that you can use to basically create a dynamic shadow light source. I always wanted that shit in Source Engine. And if you use that entity, you can make one light that casts a proper dynamic shadow. And I still have a map I made back in 2007. But where I set that up. But and you can't use the flashlight when it's working because it basically is the flashlight texture in a way. I don't know, the way the engine was set was kind of annoying, but either way, I'm using the Half-Life 2 version right now, and I've just been in the mood for a while, and I was making my own thing, but then due to the nature of working with Source Engine, I started, like I loaded up to test my level, but sometimes I'll just load levels from the original game and just mess with them. And I was playing around on the canals, and I got to the part, it's hl2, like right when you get to Black Mesa East. And there's to the right, like going to Eli's on the left there with that little dock thing. But to the right, there's this gray building with these really tall windows. And I just think it looks so cool. And I wanted to just no clip and just walk around on the gravel in front of it, just to look at it. And you can't because there's clip brushes all around it. They even put triggers there with that one entity that blocks the airboat from being able to get up there. And I always, I never understood, why do game designers do everything to try to take the fun out of a game? I've heard that before. Oh, players optimize the fun out of games. It's like, no, the developers do. Like, what is it hurting for me to be able to walk around in the empty gravel parking lot of a random nondescript building? It doesn't even have any doors, right? And it just annoyed me. So I was like, you know what? I'll take the motherfucking clip brushes off there. And I already had a decompiled version of that map in my back, on my backup drives. And I just opened, I copied it to my working drive. I opened the file and I just deleted the clip brushes. And when I did that, like it became the last couple days, I've basically been fleshing the area out myself. So I've got the VMF for that level open and hammer. Not only did I delete those clip brushes, but I started to actually redesign some of that bit there. Like now you can walk on it, but I also added stairs to get to it, like a separate dock for that building, kind of like the one on the left side. I put a door into it. Now there's shit in there, right? Like I put generators in there because it's like a hydroelectric kind of thing. And then where the gate is that you can't go past, that's basically the end of the level right there. I extended past that and I added, these access buildings or like storage areas with their own little walkways and like parking lots. And then a little bit to the left of that one gray building that's there by default, I put a new building that's got a parking lot with cars in it. And this is, a little bit before the coast chapter where you get the buggy and you're driving along, the cliff sides and all that. And so the the road that leads to the parking lot of that new building I added, you see it go around the side of the little mountain that's there, kind of curves around, and it's got its own little guardrail. And I like have cars there like they were driving in. It's like, so you got to come around the coast to the parking lot. And so just kind of building on some of the stuff you see a little bit later in the game. And who knows how long I'll go with it. I always do stuff like this, right? Because I've made my own, you know, my own ideas for over 20 years. But also a lot of times what I like to do is I'll decompile an existing map and just add my own touches to it, add new areas, or just flat out make it look better. And that's what I've been doing with that. And, I don't really care a whole lot about Half-Life games or any of that stuff anymore. Source Engine is just a means to create, video game levels because I just enjoy doing stuff like that. I'll set up my own little mini single player games with a lot of, there's one I had set up. I don't know if it was for Source Engine or not, but I can't even find it right now, but I had this real elaborate. It's sort of like the prison bit from Half-Life 2, but you start out in this area where it's like the cell block is like flooded, and then you go to a different part, and you start to see the like head crab zombies, and it's sort of set up like as like a little kind of like survival horror type of thing. There's some elements of that in Half-Life 2. You'll look at a TV or something and it'll make like the spooky music sound, or you'll see a face and it disappears and like shit like that. I was leaning into that. But, I've done all sorts of shit like that for over 20 years, but I just don't care about like Half-Life as a series anymore. Valve is, a bunch of psychotic corporate criminals. Can't believe I ever wanted to work for those pieces of shit when I was a kid. Like it was like my life's dream to be able to work at Valve. It's kind of crazy to think I ever fucking thought that, but yeah, I don't really have an exact goal to these videos. I'm just kind of talking about whatever comes to mind. But since I've been thinking about Source Engine more, I started watching some videos. I've already watched a few. That'll be probably its own video at some point. Is all these so-called analyses that are really just basically glorified plot synopsises, and then like an extremely abridged, like, let's play of the game. It's like you didn't really analyze anything. I've seen this one dude, he was actually looking at the source code that's available and trying to fix bugs in the game, and he's actually discovering new shit. It's like that's an actual, that's actual game journalism. That's an actual analysis. Most of these are just, they're not doing anything new or interesting. They're essentially reading the Wikipedia, synopsis or like whatever. And I don't know. it can be kind of trite like that, but whatever. That's 15 minutes, so this part I'm done recording.